Good evening, church family. How are you? Welcome to Big Pause number 6. Can't believe we're already at the 6th of these, pauses and just stopping and reflecting on what's going on. Well, this is different tonight because I don't have one guest, but I have 2 guests. And I'm going to let both of them introduce themselves. You heard Ted once already, and you know this other face over here, but why don't you two introduce yourselves? Tell everyone what you do outside of church. Why don't we start there? Who would like to go first?
Go ahead, Ted.
Well,
you've done one of these before. So
yeah. So I'm the vice chairman of a public company. We own ships, containers, tankers, dry bulk, pretty boring stuff. But it gives me a bit of an international view. Many of you know I travel a lot. Vice chairman means the guy who used to be the president. So I'm trying to go between retirement and keeping my foot in the game. And some days it works, some days it doesn't.
Thank you.
I'm just happy I got to shower and get dressed for it. So I haven't gotten dressed in 2 months. So I appreciate everybody allowing me to do that. So I am a senior director at Markel Insurance Company. I work in the city. It's a Richmond, Virginia company. We have offices all over the world. And I specifically am a senior director there. And I work with professional lines insurance. So that's like professionals you would think of, architects, engineers, lawyers, accountants, that kind of stuff. And so we underwrite on my side, which means we evaluate risks. We extend insurance to those firms, and it's all about trying to make your losses and your claims less than your money you're bringing in on the premium side. So that's what we do. So
that's great.
Yeah, like that.
Did you? And I said to my Ted is my uncle as well. If you don't know that, you're listening. I said, did you ever imagine that years ago they used to torture me as a child when I was a kid? Older brother, right, uncle, they would love it. We had a lot of fun, a lot of great memories, but I don't think any of us ever envisioned like a moment
this
like
would
this.
happen like this.
So
Your mother didn't, because I can't get him riled. He'd go ahead and I leave, and Mom would
it's really your fault.
You started. Well, so excited that both of you could be here. Before we get into the topic and talk, and our topic tonight is, looking at a post-pandemic world and what that's going to look like. From a secular viewpoint of what's happening economically, what's happening socially, but what that means for us. What does that portend for us as Christians, and how we are to live our lives, and what it means for us living in the end times. So we want to delve into that. But first, I'd be remiss if we didn't mention, I don't know how many of you know Ravi Zacharias, an incredible man of faith, an apologist. We would say, many would say like a C.S. Lewis of our day, and out there debating, agnostics and atheists, and he has had a profound impact. The ripple effect from this man's life, the legacy that he has left is incredible. So I don't know if either of you, because I know both of you hold him in high esteem. So
yeah, he writes some very deep books, but what I found I appreciated is when I go to YouTube and just put his name in,
right.
And especially when he goes to the college campuses, because it's eclectic questions from every different angle, and he just gets up there and he takes about 5 seconds to assimilate it, and then he comes back with brilliant people can take a very deep subject and explain it very clearly and concisely, and that's what he does. And it's just brilliant. So check him out on YouTube.
Yeah, Ravi is somebody that's touched my life in a big way over the years. And I would say at this church, he's like one of the bricks of all the different people that we've drawn from over the years. And he's somebody that I'm going to miss very much. And the Christian community and the church will miss very much. I mean, to me, he's one of the top people in the modern church that really impacted for the kingdom. I mean, when you think about the culture that we're in and the secular colleges and universities, and he hit it head on and allowed people to ask questions, and he took the hardest questions head on from the biggest name professors, who were biggest atheists in the world, and he made it okay to have an intellectual discussion. And of course he merged his Eastern background with the Western, and
which is important.
It's so important. And my last thing I would just say with Ravi is, as Ted said, go to YouTube, watch some of the videos, go on podcasts, but more importantly, if you have teenagers, if you have people going to college or thinking about college or in college, just try to plant a seed, look at one of the topics of a podcast, send it maybe to them and say, hey, check this guy out. I promise you, he will ask questions and give answers to things that none of us can even really, enunciate. It's so powerful.
And also give it to people that may be in your life
That's
that
what I
are
was gonna
very intelligent
Yes.
and they're using that
Yes.
to keep away from the gospel.
Yeah.
I think very intelligent people make a very dumb decision. They decide not to believe in God and don't research it like they
Yeah.
do everything else they do in
Yeah,
life.
so good.
So if you put him into their life,
Yeah.
he can start cracking that wall that they've put up.
So true. Ravi Zacharias, if you don't know his last name.
And that you hit on exactly why I brought that up. And there are a lot of people I think listening that they have children, maybe older children, and they struggle with their faith and they have doubts and they have questions, and he's somebody that maybe can address some of those. All right, so you ready to go?
Sure, we're
All right. Well,
dress, so that's good.
I thought we would start again looking at some of the economic and social issues pertaining to this pandemic. What are you, either of you, whomever wants to start, what are you seeing in the news today? What has really grabbed your attention? What are we looking at? You can, maybe let's go economically. How about we start there? And what are you seeing, and what do you think a post-pandemic world is going to look like?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to start?
Well, let's start with a couple things before I just delve into economics. One, someone said to me, and it was very interesting, if this was done in the 90s or 20 years ago,
Yes.
our economy would have gone flat. Forget about just, 20% down, because we wouldn't have been able to do work from home.
Yeah.
So, to a certain extent, God had mercy on us by doing it today and not 25 years ago.
Right.
The other thing is, this is a shot across the bow, I think, to society as a whole, because if you go back 2 months ago, we thought the whole world needed to be reordered. And to a certain extent, it is, but not to the extent we thought, right? Oh, this has had a 7% or 5% kill rate. Now more data came in, and we realized, well, it's worse than the flu, but it's not our worst case scenario. So I think that's sort of a relief too, even though there's all deaths around us, and we all know people from the church and friends and who have unfortunately loved ones passed away. But I think I can maybe mention it later spiritually, but it's put this knock into the invincibility of technology. Well, we thought we were past pandemics, we were past recessions, and God said, oh yeah? Well, here's just a little taste of my medicine, because he does it out of love. And going, so do you have, before I get
I was just going to say the same thing. I think that we're seeing God shake every institution, government, anything we believed in prior to this pandemic has been shaken. And it reminds me of your message last week, the fire and the wood and stuff, what's left, you know what I mean? We're going to see what's left. And the only thing I'll add to what Ted said is that what I was thinking about with this was, and we had this conversation a little bit, we have to get used to change, right? Change is inevitable. We're all always dealing with change. In this case, originally I thought this was maybe a paradigm shift, and I was even saying that this is a big shift in the paradigm. We're moving it. But now that I think about it, I don't know that it's necessarily a shift to something else. It's as if we just got turbocharged and pushed down the road a lot quicker than we would have been without this thing. In terms of we're seeing things now that maybe would have taken 10 or 15
Well, that's when we
years.
talked about that Musk interview.
Yes.
And that was very clear. That was very evident listening to his words that, things have been sped up.
Yeah. And there's no question, as you're preaching on what you're preaching on and the eschatology and the end times, and, obviously anybody that's looking, and, most of us are in this church, and you're paying attention to the signs of the times and, prophecy. And so that's something that everybody's looking at through a lens. We're looking through that lens. So it makes it interesting.
Excuse the phone in the background.
Yeah. It's a busy house.
Busy house.
It's a virtual world. So all I think, when you get to the economics, the issue is that we're solving we're solving a short-term problem, but it's got long-term consequences economically.
Right.
We're throwing so much money at this, but it's affecting the world we live in. I think the world we live in will be more digital, more indebted, and less global to a certain extent. More indebted meaning, we'll get into the debt in a bit, but certainly more digital. Work from home is going to go. It's 5% today. It was supposed to be 20% some years from now. 20% 20% by next January, probably.
Yeah.
That's,
Or
so there's some
Yeah, it
trends
goes
in
with what you're
place
saying. Right.
that have been accelerated. Like, may I say, having put 4 kids through college, the college system was broke,
Mhm.
but no one was afraid to. Everyone was afraid to get up and say the king has no clothes on.
Right.
Right.
Well, now it does because kids were paying more money for a piece of paper that was less valuable when they got out of college,
So true.
and they were in so much debt and they were being burdened. And now everybody's going to sit back and say, you know what? I kind of thought this was wrong. Now we really do know it's
We know
wrong.
it's wrong.
So things will change.
No, I think that you touched on a few things. I'm not going to belabor that, but I mean, economically, yeah, we've got a big problem in this country. I mean, we've got a debt problem. We've had a debt problem, and now it's exacerbated.
Well, you even brought up and
Yeah.
you had texted us in
Yeah.
a group thread
Yeah.
about our national debt. Maybe at 1981 it was $1 trillion.
So it took from
Yeah, go ahead.
the beginning of this country's foundation,
Inception,
formation,
yeah.
inception to 1981 to hit $3 trillion. I think it was.
Yes.
And now a month ago we were at $21 trillion in debt as a country, and in just a month we tacked on $3 trillion more. So
Think about that. $3 trillion.
none of us can comprehend what $1 trillion looks like, but it's beyond anything we can comprehend. And so now you look at that through the lens of what's the future of this country after the pandemic. And I don't know the answer.
$1 trillion is a million millions.
Right.
Yeah.
So- and our yearly GDP,
Mhm.
gross domestic product,
Yes.
all of the value of all goods and services is about $21 trillion. So we'll be spending by the time QE4 is over,
Mm-hmm.
quantitative easing. They're now calling it QE forever
Yeah.
because who knows we're going to get out of it. We're spending probably 20% of our GDP this year, above our GDP, to fight this fight. The last time we did this, the only time we broke that record was in 1945, at the end of World War II. We were up at 25%, and it took a long time. Now in the 90s, actually, when House, the Republicans in the Congress and Clinton worked together, the deficit actually got very. I don't know if we eliminated it, but it was very low.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
Yeah.
By the time Bush left office, it was $5 trillion. This W. It was $5 trillion when he got in. 9/11, it went to $10 trillion, right? Then
Mhm.
things had to change. Under Obama, it went to $20 trillion. So now we're sitting here where our debt is more than our yearly GDP, which is not a good sign.
Kicking it down the road.
Well, that's the point.
Yes.
Eventually, the piper is going to have to be
Yeah.
paid. What happens? So now we're throwing a lot of money out, right? We're just, here's money, guys. It's thrown out the window. And inflation is what? Too much money chasing after too little goods.
Mhm.
That's inflation. So because our interest rates are so low, the debt we have to pay, we're paying very low interest rates. If our inflation goes to 7 or 8%, or my God, 18% like it was in the 80s, our debt becomes 30 trillion, 35 overnight.
Right.
So we're on the edge of a precipice now. I think we've thrown so much money that we can't get out of it. And it's just a matter of, there's no cushion in the system. Something can happen down the road, and the world will go to a combination of a euro and a dollar and a China. So the U.S. won't be the reserve currency. So why were we getting away with overspending?
Right.
Because the Japanese and the Chinese were buying our debt, our treasuries, so we could spend more to buy their goods.
Right.
That game will come to an end.
It has to come to an end at some point. I mean, it just has to.
And it's you had brought this up too the last time we talked about it. I think it's worth restating or just talking about again about we don't really have a cushion. So if there's another pandemic down the road, which many scientists, many people talk to, right? I mean, Bill Gates of the world, it's when, right? So when that happens, I mean that's a scary proposition. Not only for the rest of the world, but I mean obviously mainly for us.
I think you're already spending money you don't have.
Yeah, right. So
Eventually, everybody in the world looks at you and says, I'm not rushing to. When you talk about risk, the Treasury is zero risk. Theoretically, that's what the world says.
Mhm.
And everything's based off the Treasury, right?
Right.
Debt,
Right.
junk debt, that kind of medium debt. And it's rated off the Treasury.
Right.
The Treasury may not be the rule, the golden rule for the world. And then what happens is we collapse. To me, I think we become, sorry for my British friends, but we become what the UK is. Just another has-been who used to be a world leader. Somebody else steps
Well,
up.
not to the UK, right? We become every previous empire, right?
Right, exactly.
Because think about it, it's like
I'm
everybody
saying
has
curves,
a certain
you-
lifetime, right? And I think to tack on to what you just said, Ted, I sent you guys something.
Yeah, I
on
saw
this.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
wrote some
thought this
stuff
was
down.
interesting. Am I running ahead?
No,
of
go
something?
ahead. No, I'd love. That's perfect.
So there's this gentleman, I forgot his name, but he wrote. There's a few books on this, and a lot of people have talked about the life cycles of empires, and they just talked about the different stages, right? And
Right.
so when you talk about the fourth stage that we were in, the stagnation stage, talks about what you see in that stage, right? Monopoly, corruption, parasitic elites, soaring debt, self-reinforcing feedback loops, financial trickery is seen as the fix. Those are symptoms of that stage, and the last stage, the next stage after that is collapse. I mean, it's hard to read this and think about the world we live in and the politics, and whatever your politics are, you just look around and see how people are behaving. It's hard to not say that we may be right in this cycle.
So, am I correct, guys? I think you keep hearing, and I'm going to get into this on Sunday, but we keep hearing that, well, eventually it's going to be life as we knew it before. We're going to get back to
It's
normal.
going to be better.
Do you think, because in my estimation, we're not going back to the normal that we knew.
It's like
I don't
after
think we're
9/11.
ever getting back.
I
You
think
feel
it's,
it's
changes. There's big changes, there's small changes. I mean, just think about the house. I think everyone's going to have, no-touch faucets, and you're going to have, be like the Japanese. Everybody's going to take their shoes off. There's little changes also.
little changes
Yeah.
too.
Stone
Yeah.
floors,
Macro,
natural fiber.
micro, yeah.
Think locally, right? That was
Right.
more of a green thought. Everyone's going to say, well, I'm going to buy locally now because remember all our medical equipment was being made in China, and they were
That's being pulled back.
putting it out late. So all these the supply chain, because I deal with ships,
Yeah, sure.
is on the water.
Right.
So if the Chinese or the East Asia or the Europeans, whoever's making what you need, says we're not giving you anymore, you have like 60 days to
Right.
whatever's coming, and then it runs out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no country, not Europe, no, it will be, tied to that kind of hold up anymore. They're going to have everything's going to be piles of all kinds of equipment around.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and the just-in-time supply chain that we've
Finished.
been used to is right. I mean,
Finished.
can't do it anymore. What you said about going back to normal. One thing that makes me think of, I heard a tweet somewhere along the way, and
Right.
somebody basically said to the effect, when you look at the pace we were at before and what we're doing now, and maybe the way we were living before was abnormal, and
But
this
that's my
is-
point on
right,
Sunday.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true.
And moving into a new normal and what that looks like. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just, I can always think macro. Urbanization is moving, in
Yeah.
somewhere between 07 and 2012, the world passed a marker where 51% of the world was now urbanized, meaning they live in cities.
Right.
So before you had the Industrial Revolution, it was all agriculture. So
Right.
everybody was very spread out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you started getting people coming to the cities. So no, urbanization was a word that nobody knew 200 years ago.
Right.
And it's trending up. So now you may have a step back. Let's see if that's just a blip in the long-term average. But the U.S., I think we're like 82% urbanized.
Mm-hmm.
China's just got over the 50%. So in theory, the more mature the society and the economy, the more urbanized you get. And Southeast Asia, which is really where the growth is from now on, is going to go in that direction.
Yeah, and I think to couple with that, I think you said this earlier, we're going to see a big move that's already started years ago with Brexit and Trump and US.
Right.
A nationalism versus globalism.
Right.
That's
I'm glad you're bringing that up because I wanted to get into that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Nationalism's really picking up steam because of, again, pushing things 10,
Yeah.
15 years down the road, a little faster than maybe we would have gotten here. But, when, forget your politics, Trump ran on a nationalist platform.
Yeah.
And, it's US, me, us
Right.
first, right? And you saw it happen in Britain, and you see it happening in other countries. And now when you talk about like medical supplies being made in another country and, things that are vital to a society,
Right.
you're going to start to pull things in and say, well, U.S., I remember in the 80s it was, hey, U.S. made, proud to be made in the U.S. and all that. And the other thing about urbanization that I think is interesting is that in my mind, there's no question there's going to be a move away from urbanization in cities and towards the suburbs and towards, country living, which if you look at the demographics of this country, typically, run more of a national theme in those places. I always feel like the urbanization, the reason that you have, well, let's ask the question, so why are people living in the cities? Why are they going?
Right.
Well, because there's jobs, number one, that pay higher usually, and there's everything you need, restaurants, clothing, whatever you need is right there. You got transportation, you don't have to have a car. All that stuff's important. If you take away the jobs, and I think you're going to see this with the economy, businesses going out, things changing, how they do business, people are going to start asking, why am I living here?
Yeah.
The founding fathers put the capital in Washington because they didn't want one city to be the economic, cultural, and societal capital. Then everything would have to work around it.
Right.
And I think that's, you sort of have, listen, go back to the 4th century BC with Athens. What happens during the plagues? Well, everybody complained. The people from Manhattan were going out to Long Island.
Right.
That's what happened in all the plagues throughout history. The rich left the cities to their countries and left the poor people to die in the cities.
Right.
This is not a new phenomenon.
Yeah, it's not a new
That's
phenomenon.
so true. That's so true.
Yeah, it's even interesting. I was going to get into it on Sunday, looking at like in the early part of the 20th century. You remember that Warren Harding, a president we don't really talk a lot about. His whole platform was a return to normalcy. So they just came out of the Spanish flu, came out of World War I. And so there's a lot of similarities between. So I'm going to get into it. It's really interesting to look at that. But I like that. It's not the first time that we're experiencing this.
As we say, when people say it's different,
Yeah.
right, in
It's
business,
different this time.
you know they're going to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's never different.
So
Because history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes pretty close.
that's good. That's a good line.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
But can we talk to people that are listening? And I got two really bright guys. If you figure that
I
out.
don't know where they are.
Let us know where they're
room.
All right. So talk to a one world government. I hear you both mentioning that a little bit because 10 years ago, 5 years ago, how things got accelerated in that respect. Can you talk to how this could be on the horizon, a unified currency? We're seeing cryptocurrency and things. So I don't know if either of you.
I just think in general in that topic,
Right.
I think when you just look at a secular view of the world, I think that you have to have answers for things, right? People want things as questions, right? So as a Christian, our answer is, it's Christ and His kingdom and all these things that are going to be coming right now. If you're not a Christian, what do you rely on? You look to the government. The government is really the thing that's going to provide for you and give you what you need. And that's really the thing that I think people are focused on. So when you talk about one world government, as countries that are pushing Christ out the door, their answer is, well, we need more government. And you know what the real solution is? If we were all thinking the same and we were all unified, we can eliminate war because we'd all be together and nobody's going to fight. And so this theory plays out, and you see it in the UN because I assume that's where the vehicle will be.
Absolutely.
That if we just had a one world government, we'd solve all our problems. It reminds me of us like when we're growing as an American.
Panacea.
Well, it reminds me all the time. All of us, we do this, right? Like, if I just get the pool, if the kids just go to this college, and I find myself always saying, "Wait, that's not going to make me happy."
Yeah,
but we
buy that.
We buy it. Right?
Yeah, we buy that.
So
The EU really started because it was an economic agreement.
Mm-hmm.
The Europeans looked around and said, we can't have Germany and France and Britain fighting all the time.
Right.
We have to connect them.
Right.
And that's the same idea that they'll bring globally. And I think you're seeing headlines in the papers. I forget, but I probably said these things last time. I just don't remember.
No, it's good to repeat.
Here.
Don't worry. It's good to repeat.
That it's a global problem. We need a global solution.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? President Trump was going after the WHO, right?
Yeah.
Now maybe a better one comes out after he comes out of office years down. And maybe a real pandemic comes that is a 6 or 7% kill rate.
Right.
Then the world will stand up and say, okay, we've had about enough of this.
Right.
We have to have a global solution, and we all need to work together. So it's the beginning of the EU. It's really economic. It's medical. It just morphs into a one world government.
Yeah.
That's the natural course of events. Hospitals and orphans were started by Christians.
Yeah.
But the nations took them over.
Well,
And
and
they just grow. They just naturally grow.
Yeah.
Bureaucracy.
I like when you said morph because you look at just history in our country, right? Look back to, and I don't want to go down this road too much, but 9/11 happens, and we all were shaken to our core, right? We couldn't believe what we were seeing. And so the government's answer was, the Patriot Act. And
No, that's good. You should.
right?
Yeah,
They talk about the Patriot Act, going to
absolutely.
keep us safe and everything, right?
Right.
And it had a sunset provision. I don't know if people
5
know,
years.
5 year
5 years.
sunset provision. It was supposed to go away. Well, but that's the point, right? Like
Yeah.
once you give governments control, the genie's out of the bottle, and you can't get it back in. So that's what happened in 9/11, and look where we are now. Your right to privacy is, if you looked you go in a time machine, go back to the 80s and go to now, you would not recognize your rights versus those. And so now what do we have now? We have a pandemic. So after 9/11, it was, keep us safe from terrorism. And the government said, okay, here's our answer. Well, now it's like we have a pandemic. Save us, keep us safe. We don't want to die. You got to protect us. And so they go, okay, and they hand a bill that's 1,200 pages that nobody reads, and they pass it.
So you think it's disconcerting with what you're seeing with governmental, the intervention,
I think what's
the-
disconcerting is, again, when you have a Christian view, you know that these answers
That's what I'm trying to
they're
get. It's
fool's
good.
gold.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Right.
look good
At the
on
end
the
of the day.
surface, but we know man is flawed. Man's answers are not going to be God's answers, and there's going to be problems with them. And as much as they dress it up and make it look nice, and look, there's nothing wrong with government. We need to respect
Yeah,
government.
exactly.
We
I was
need to-
hoping you could say
we
that.
need
Yeah.
to,
We're not
we need-
anti-government.
Yeah, we're not running around.
Yeah.
We're not trying to protest everything
Right.
and militias and whatever.
It's good people
Yeah.
trying to do good and making
Yeah,
very
they're
good
not bad.
decisions,
A lot of them
but
are
it's
bad.
worldly
Right.
decisions that are leading down a road that they don't understand.
Well, it's a Christian worldview, right? If your view is not a Christian worldview, you're just going to do things that don't.
If
really
I'm not a Christian,
line
Bill
up.
Gates is my hero because he's
Of
coming up
course.
with all these ideas.
Oh,
absolutely.
And
You see
And he's a
that.
good guy.
Yeah,
He's a
right.
great-
It's being
But
promoted,
it,
probably
it's
means
just
well.
working down the wrong
yeah,
road.
yeah, absolutely. And even I don't even know if I'm derailing our conversation a little bit or digressing, but not governmentally, but how about the social media platforms?
Mm.
Right? I mean, what we're seeing with Google and Facebook and YouTube, and how suppressing views that maybe don't fit their narrative, the people that own these companies, they're private entities, so they have every right to.
Well, two examples.
Go
Joe
ahead.
Rogan just switched over
Yeah.
from YouTube to Spotify because, okay, they gave him a lot of money. He's a capitalist.
Yes.
But he said that he
I've
was
heard him say
worried
that.
about all the
Should be.
Censoring.
censoring they did for
Yeah.
him, and making sure he couldn't say this. So he said, "Listen, I'm just going to say what I have to say." And if you listen to him, it's a spicy language.
Oh,
So,
absolutely,
it's
yeah.
very spicy. The other thing that brought it home to me, I was in Seal and I were in Hong Kong, and we got into our hotel the first time, and we opened up, and it feels like I can't get Facebook. Because Facebook, they just shut it down.
Yeah.
So the people in China, they have to go
That's
to
good.
sort of the dark web to get real information. They don't know what's going on around there. Really, they don't. They come over here,
Yeah.
and they go back, and they know they're being watched. So it's not North Korea, but China's not as free as people think it is. And that's where we're leading as a world, I think. With technology, though,
The 5G.
with 5G, when you have a parade in North Korea, if you're the least happiest face in that parade, you're out.
Yeah.
So you have to fake everything.
Yeah, I've used the term. I don't know if I found it somewhere or whatever, but I call it a technocracy. And what I really mean by that
You
is,
said that the other day,
there's
right?
several companies. I
Right.
think you look at the largest companies, the Googles and the Amazons, and
Yes.
these companies they control a lot of what happens in our society. And when they go knock on government's door and say, "We want you to change this or that," you've seen them. You've seen Apple backdoor things for the government to get at. Good intentions, right? A bad actor, a terrorist. We need you to unlock this phone, and they do it for good reasons. But there's things there that what we need to be careful of. And again, I didn't mention this earlier, but as a former lawyer and practicing an attorney, First Amendment rights are really important to me, and I just watch what's happening in this country and the censorship. The problem we have in this country with this issue is there's tons of censorship going on the internet that we read about. If you don't have the views that everybody else has, it gets
Exactly.
pushed down,
Exactly.
squashed, changed, called names, right? That's got to change. But the problem is our Constitution is set up to protect you from the government doing that. And these institutions are private, but they've gotten so big, in my opinion, that they're almost quasi-government because
Absolutely.
everybody's on YouTube, everybody's on these platforms, and my analogy is, in the early parts of this country, if you had an opinion and you wanted to voice yourself, you could go on any street corner. And I think this is where the phrase comes, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. Because you'd bring a box and you'd stand up and you'd just start talking and handing out flyers, and people would gather and they'd listen to you, and they decided, maybe I'll agree with you, maybe I don't. Yeah. But they had the choice, and you could walk away. I mean, I remember in the 80s, Howard Stern and people when Christians would protest, people would say, well, just turn on the channel.
Right.
Yeah. Just turn on the channel. You don't have to listen to it. But now, it's forced censorship. Yeah. And who's going to protect
what's
speech?
Worse? Let them grow to where they're growing, right?
Right.
What will happen is maybe the government comes in and does what they do at AT&T, and they break it up.
Yeah.
But now instead of one big devil, you have 5 devils.
I agree. Yeah.
So I don't think it really solves the problem of censorship.
Did you guys ever? I got a notice the other day from Facebook, and I don't write much on Facebook, but I wrote a message, and then I got this message back. My post was removed because the information that I presented was not factual.
They decide now.
They decided, so they.
That's true. That's happening. I mean, so you have to question it, and sometimes
it's amazing. I couldn't believe it.
You
took a picture of it.
Yeah. I mean, you still can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater.
Right.
We understand.
Yeah.
That. But there are certain things that you should be allowed to say. And remember, and I hope I'm not stealing this from your message this week, because I think you said something about it. There's an old phrase that we have a tendency to say, okay, we sit back and watch. Germany's a perfect example with the Jews before World War II,
Absolutely.
Right? So they come for a certain group, right? And so in this case, it's conservatives or whatever their speech they're trying to squash. And if you don't fit in that group, you just kind of go, wow, that's a shame, and I really wish they wouldn't do that, but, it doesn't affect me. And, it just keeps going until eventually they come for you. And then, what happens? Nobody's left to defend anybody.
Yeah.
So you have to stand up for these things. And again, this country was built on principles and morals and values that are Christian based. They're you could debate whether, the forefathers were Christian or not. The point is, the values were Christian values, and
you see in the world. I'm reading a book yesterday, and just you making me think of it. The author was saying he's saying by 2050 that there'll be more Muslims in the world than Christians, and that the Muslim religion is growing at a faster rate than
it is today.
It is today.
Is it already higher now, or no? Is it not?
We're higher. But his point was by 2050, we'll see that. And by 2030, it was getting really interesting.
In the West, in Europe, and now in the States, the fertility rate has dropped dramatically.
Right.
I mean, Ireland, Italy, all the countries, they're not even reproducing at 2 couples, they're older.
Yeah, much older.
Japan's got that. Actually, China has that problem because they did the one-child policy.
Right.
They're a lot old. You think it's 1.4 billion, they'd have a lot of young people. They do, but they have a lot of old people.
So the ratio of male to female is huge.
So taking what we're talking about with these private entities, again, Facebook, YouTube, and Google, Amazon, whatever you want to pick. What does this mean for us as Christians today? So you're kind of saying you see an erosion of our rights really as Christians, not even as Americans, but I'm saying more as Christians, that our point of view and our beliefs are being squashed, suppressed more so. I mean, let's call it like it is. That's really what's happening.
I mean, do you think in the 50s, if we had this, they would call church service non-essential like they do today?
That's
probably not.
Of course not.
So true.
So that's the slippery slope that we've started going.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, by the way? It wasn't on my list. It wasn't about churches being, non-essential during this time. Because you see, there was a mega church pastor. I didn't even know who the guy was in Kentucky, and he came out and he was very outspoken about it.
I mean, the first thing that hits me is just, I think the hypocrisy. We're always getting pointed at being hypocrites, right? But one thing that hit me with New York City was, when the pandemic first broke, it was, Franklin Graham was there with his big truck and Samaritan's Purse is doing there, and they're helping people. And well, as soon as things started to look a little better, certain lobby groups got voiced opinions, and Cuomo said you got to get out.
Yeah.
De Blasio, so they kick him out, and I'm like, They want, when it was faith-based organizations, they're doing charitable work, right? So they want that, but they don't want us to be able to just have our own views and base it on the Bible and allow us to assemble, as the First Amendment says, right?
Aside from the government, the one worry I have is that we make this whole virtual church normal. This
something
is
I wanted to
really
yes.
concerns me because
Same
I
here.
have a lot of Catholic friends, and they'll just turn on the TV, and I send mass, and I'm great. But especially worship, right? I mean, worship is it's communal, it's participatory, right? It's not by myself. I mean, the church is a body, and you may have some people that have. The good is some people may have tuned in who didn't ever go to church before because
Yeah.
they could do it in their privacy.
Right.
Nobody sees them, and maybe they're checking out Christianity
Right.
secretly.
Right.
But then you have some of the people who are just starting to go to church say, well, I can just watch it from home. So
Right.
it's a two-edged sword. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
And I do think it's, I don't know what's
It's my biggest concern. It's my biggest concern.
I don't know what
as
you're deciding as the
yeah.
senior pastors, but I'd be very careful to touch that third rail of video and continue it. I think maybe after. But I do think it's a worry for the church. Because people just, how many people go to church today in the States? I'm talking the Christians, Protestants, and it's really it's a passive, right? It's a consumerism.
Of course.
And
Yes.
they're just going to translate that to their own living room.
I think we've done people a real disservice. We have consumer Christianity, and I
Right.
think it's created a lot
And
of
this feeds into
casual
that.
Christian. Absolutely,
It
yeah.
feeds into
It's
that.
either-
It feeds
yes.
into the independent spirit of Christianity that we live with, for its large.
Sean, I'm so glad you brought that up. I have never seen. Listen, you both are older than I am, but doing this for some time now, the spirit of independence that is rampant in the church is become quite problematic. And you don't see people really asking a lot of questions. I think you just meet people, and most people have all the answers. Like, whatever happened to asking questions? Whatever happened to submitting to authority and leadership and people that God has put in place? I think that's a problem. And even for it's not just a younger generation.
No.
I think it crosses over,
Absolutely.
age, gender, all that.
I listened a lot to Derek Prince lately, and he was talking about.
Tell them who Derek Prince is.
Derek Prince is a famous Oxford-educated
Brilliant.
scholar,
Gosh.
like Ravi to a certain extent,
Yeah. His,
who became a great preacher. He really dealt in the charismatic gifts with people raising from the dead, and was a real student of the Bible.
Mm.
And he was going over countries, and he said, in England, the spirit that sits over them is pride. It's very prideful, even though they're
Right.
second or third place in the world. But here he said it's independence.
Mhm.
From the independence war.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a spirit of independence that will come and go, but it's raising its ugly head again here.
How about? Oh, go ahead, John.
No. Go ahead.
I was just going to say to that point, go and tethered to what you said before. You see so many people, and they go, oh, like, "Who's your pastor?" It's some pastor that's like 1,000 miles away that they watch on TV, and they have no concept of what the local church is. I mean, we're meant, all of us, in whatever community we live. It doesn't mean you can't listen. We all do.
Yeah.
You listen to other preachers and people that are very gifted. But at the end of the day, where are you serving? Where are you doing life
That was
together
the
with
message
other
last week.
people in the local church? And that bothers me. And we're losing some of that. And people are getting a false sense of what the gospel really is, what Christianity is.
And the open churches we're having on Wednesdays,
Oh.
letting everybody come in and experiment with their.
I hope you're getting ready. That we're going to be having those meetings again soon. And right, how good were those meetings?
To me, it's 1 Corinthians.
Yeah,
People were coming in, and somebody had a psalm, somebody had a song,
yeah.
and it was the first century church as close as we can get today.
Yeah, so
And
good.
it's a shame that, also just with the Lord's Supper. How do you do that virtually? Okay, we do it at home.
Right.
And we do it, some of us do a
Yeah,
great job of
right.
it. You were talking about your family, what a blessing it is.
Yeah.
But that's also around the table, and we
Right.
should be together.
Right.
And if you do it by yourself, it's like, well, what's on TV after this?
Yeah.
You both have been. You lived in Connecticut for a while. You were in Connecticut. You were in Tampa.
Mhm.
You've been to a lot of different churches.
Oh yeah.
So would you say what we see? And this, I'm not pumping up CHCC,
Mhm.
but you've been around the block per se, right? You've seen a lot of different churches.
Unfortunately,
Would you
yes.
say this is, unfortunately, yes. Would you say then this is, in a sense, we're an anomaly in the fact of even like open church, that setting, and going back
Very much
to
so. Everything was consumer oriented. It was, you sit back, we'll do the show, just pay your money, come in on time, leave on time. Now it wasn't
Yeah.
in this. It was that's the way.
That's
I
the
was
way
in
it
an
was
MT,
overt, right?
I was
It
in a
was
Methodist
just-
church. It was
right.
nobody
clergy,
thought,
lady.
nobody,
This is
like,
there's a gap, there's a chasm.
and nobody
between-
thinks outside the box, right?
Yeah.
Everybody said, "Well, this is the way it was, so this is the way we'll do it."
See, that's what I want to get. See, that's what I want to get to as we move out of this.
How do we-
A new normal that is, we look at this and go, wow, no, we're not going to do things just the way that we always did. We're not going to do things the way that church has always done things, and that's why I am excited, and I'm jumping out of my skin, because even just our conversations, outside of this, as it pertains to that. What were you going to say?
No, I don't remember exactly where I was going at, but this has been an opportunity, this whole experience, where
That's good.
the light, when you shine light in a dark room, everything becomes visible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking of it as like a microscope. I could look at this phone, and if I go really deep with a high-power microscope, I can see things that I can't see with the naked eye. And I think this pandemic has given us an opportunity and really a blessing to kind of see some of the things that I think.
Talk to that.
Yeah, I think it's something that, let's not look at it like, we all get frustrated. We're all tired of being stuck inside, and, and maybe things have been exacerbated with our relationships, but it's also given us an opportunity to see some things, maybe in my own life, maybe things that I'm not aware of, that, there were attachments maybe before this that I said, wow, I was really attached to, sports or whatever, and now they took it away. When I said we started the conversation, God's shaking everything. And so, everything's been put on the table. Right. And now we have the fork in the road, right? We can take the narrow path, or we can take the broad path. And the narrow path is, okay, the things open up again, the government says you're allowed. What are we going to do? And what am I going to do? What's the question that we ask ourselves when we go to bed at night? And we all have to answer that question for ourselves. And I guess the narrow road is making changes and not letting this opportunity go to waste. Or the broad road may be just, okay, now I can just go back to doing everything the way I did before and forget, put my head back in the sand.
But don't you see that that will be the case, I think, for most people that aren't intentional? I think that's what worries me as a pastor. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Probably. I think you're right. I think this is a gift.
Yeah.
That in Romans, Romans 8, one of the favorite chapters.
Yes.
N.T. Wright, every time he interviewed somebody, he said, you have to give me your favorite Bible chapter, and it can't be Romans 8. It can't be John 20. That is something different. Everybody would scratch their head. Because, but I think about the gift. In the Black Plague in the 1300s, the Christians were going into the plague. And they say, the historians say, it was the seeds of the Reformation, because the rich said, these people are different. Their life doesn't mean anything. And I think, so the first gift is to us, like you said, John, it's a forced Sabbath. Mm. And we have to say to ourselves,
long Sabbath.
Here's the question I put to myself. Am I looking more forward to the Lord coming back or this pandemic ending?
Right.
Oh, it's a real barometer.
Say that again.
What am I more eagerly looking for? The Lord coming back or this pandemic ending? And it's a real barometer. You know why? And I'm talking in the mirror, saints, and I'm not...
Yeah, all of us, that's how all three of us are talking.
Am I living like this world is my home or not?
Right.
And I think I got through. Warren Buffett says, nobody knows who's swimming with their pants off until the tide goes out. Well, the tide's gone out, and a lot of us have their pants off, and it's not happy. But I think I've realized, to a certain extent, I've always kind of thought, well, I had the guy down the street.
It's a good visual.
Yeah, sorry. It's the best I can do. So I think we have to live life differently. And as you said, James, we need more questions and answers right away. And what you don't need is 30 people come up to you on Sunday and says, I have the answers, right?
Yeah.
It's basically we all have questions, let's pray, let's go to the Lord.
Sure.
How does he want to do this? He doesn't want to. The other thing is I think it's given us an opening to people who aren't saved.
Yes.
Right? Because now it's like kind of an Ash Wednesday Lent thing. You're thinking about death more than some of these young people never thought about death. And now it's like, wait a minute. I could die tomorrow, and we have this opening to say, well, "How is your spirit?" You can't. 30 years ago, you could say, "Are you a Christian?" Or not. You could say, today you have to go. Are you a spiritual person? Mm-hmm. And then you can lead in with Christ.
Mm-hmm. That's a good
point. But we have this opening that may not be there that long.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, if you think back to 9/11, the opening was like a couple of weeks. There was
a
flood into the churches, and I think we see this, and I think history backs this up, that when you have a situation like a pandemic or something major, and this is global, that it just forces people to question, and like you said, question everything. And wherever people are in, however you want to phrase religion and religious perspective, and on that spectrum, when things get really crazy and chaotic, they typically will run to somebody or something that they look to as a religious, somebody that has a path to God or something, because they want answers and they don't understand what's happening.
Right.
And so, as you said, where's the opportunity? We, as a church, not the global, the God's church, the bride, we have an opportunity because we know in our Bible there's going to be a great, commissioning of. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be saved just before the end, and that's our job to continue.
Falling away. I
Well,
mean,
there's
both things.
There's going to be
apostasy,
both, right?
And the question is,
Right.
how do we do this in a living way? Because we used to give tracts out 30 years ago. That doesn't work
Right.
today, really. I mean, I don't think that it may or may not.
Oh.
But
I don't know somebody, and somebody walks up to me. I don't even know.
Track,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
But
you
you
have to
know,
build relationship
Yeah,
with
to
somebody.
modernize that, tracks don't work, right? But screaming and yelling at people on Facebook in all caps doesn't work.
John,
either.
that's so true too.
I mean, it's an echo chamber on
I-
social media. People, I hate to say it, but in my opinion, save your energy, put it towards something else that's
Hey,
useful.
How
I
about?
mean,
Go
don't
ahead.
fight with, don't get into these discussions where you're not changing anybody's mind. You're better off trying to live the Christian life according to the Bible as best you can with people around you that speak into your life.
Sure.
That you have people around you as your bumpers to say, hey, you're going off here, you're going off there,
Yeah.
and live that life. And you know what? People that know you well and watch you, because everybody watches everybody, they will ask you questions when the times like this happen because they know there's something there. That's how I feel. The best way to evangelize is just
You don't advertise a fire. You don't have to.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking too. Like we talk about social distancing. How about social distancing from some of the technology we have?
Yeah.
Right? From social media. You're talking about social media because it's a problem.
Yeah.
Can I don't usually do this, but this is a quote I want to use this
Yeah.
Sunday. And I didn't prep both of you, but I want to read it to you and tell me what you think. And I should preface it even by saying this though. As we leave this pandemic, I think there are more things that we need to not learn but unlearn.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this
Wow.
So this is from a futurist, and it got me thinking.
We should
Right?
say that again.
I am going to say it. Yeah, someday I'm going to hammer it. And again, I don't usually do this, but this is the quote: "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." And I said, I'm looking at my life, and I'm talking to Megan before, and you guys can comment on this. And you guys are both super bright, so you can think on your feet. But I think there are things that I said, what are things that we need to unlearn for us, even as a couple in our own personal lives, and trying to challenge each other? How do you guys see that? Because I keep hearing people go, we got to learn. I'm like, what do I need to unlearn?
You want to know the first thing that hit me when you read that
Yeah,
was
go ahead.
I saw that verse about he's the potter and we're the clay.
Right.
And if you're a piece of clay, you get molded and shaped, and it's
Right.
different, and so you may be this form initially, and then it's something else because it changes. So you have to adapt, and you have to learn and unlearn, and you become something else. And I think allowing God to minister and speak into our life, people speaking into our life, allows us to start to see. It's on us at some point to make change, right? But it's also helpful to have people because we have a lot of blind spots. We don't always see our own.
So that would be one way to
Right.
unlearn,
Yeah.
in leaning on other people,
Right.
because it can be paralyzing and debilitating. Well, what do I do? What do I unlearn? How do I do it?
Right.
So that's good. What would you say to that?
I think one of the things I heard from a Catholic, Richard Rohr, that I hold in high esteem, although he has a lot of things I don't agree with, but so there's a lot of things he said that are just so right. And one of them is, the secret to Christianity is just getting out of the way.
Mhm.
Just getting yourself out of the way. Stop thinking, stop overthinking, and just read the Bible, see what it tells you. You learn, you build the first half of our life is building ourselves up, and the second half is giving it away. And most people don't get to the giving away part, right? It's just learning to not be in the front seat, learning to not be here, not be in the front, and consciously step back as that wheat, that grain of wheat, and die so life can come around you. So that's the way I think it's sort of more let go and let God take over some of these cliches, but there's so much truth to them in doing that.
And I hear what you're
That's his
saying.
big thing. With letting go. Yeah, right.
What I hear what you're saying too is it's a spirit-led life, right? It's the
Right.
inner life inside of us leading us. It was funny to me, just a real quick snippet of, we all have these stories before the pandemic, right? But I remember, I've been at this company for almost a year now. Before the pandemic, 2 months, maybe January or something, all along for months, my boss would tell me, we have this kit you can get and you can bring it home. You should get it. It's great. It's like a home office kit. You get everything, the screens and the phone, and it's like being in your office. You don't have anything you need. Right? You have everything. And I remember I would always be like, I don't need that. Well, 2 months before the pandemic, I remember something quickened in me, and it was like, remember that thing? And I started thinking about it. I was like, I'm just going to order it just in case. I don't know why. Pandemic wasn't even in the news yet. And I just did it. You can't even get them. Like, the long story short is once the pandemic hit, they didn't have them. They couldn't get them. Nobody had them. And the Lord was leading me without me even realizing. And I know all of you out there could sit here, and we're going to hear your stories. I can't wait to hear some of the stories of everybody out there, because the Lord's leading you. I am so excited, like you said, Wednesday night or something. We need to have a time where it's just testimony and just listen to people, because you're all experiencing God in different ways, and we all can't wait to hear that, because it's encouraging, right? What is the Bible? You said about this before, the independent Christianity. The Bible says, don't neglect the gathering of the saints. Why? Because we edify each other. We help you. We push each other down the road. When we fall on the race, because you talked about last week, fall, it's a race, right? Well, you trip, you fall. I never forget that runner in the Olympics, and she fell that time in the 80s. I remember her name.
Hamilton, Bethany Hamilton.
Yeah, somebody. She fell, but she got back up the race. And it's like, that's what I picture.
It's a different story.
You know what I mean? Mary Decker or something.
Oh, Slaney. Mary Decker Slaney.
Yeah, something like that. Crazy. But anyway, that's what we need. We need to encourage people. So why do you go to church, and why do we say independent, Lone Ranger Christianity doesn't work? Because it doesn't work. Because you're out there on your own. And guess what? The enemy loves that, because he can pick us off. We have nobody to help.
And we're all really not very self-aware. And so we need other brothers to say, you kind of talked, you didn't talk well to that person. Like, really?
Right,
I did?
right.
I mean, it happens to me a lot. I'm just a very forceful Italian New Yorker. And people say, why did you talk to him like that? And I'm like, what do you mean?
I've never seen it.
And so when he's building a building and he's putting those bricks together, we're rubbing off each other, and he's smoothing us out for the kingdom, for the next world where we're going to be really doing it.
Iron sharpens iron. Iron, like it's when it.
So you can sit by yourself and you can think everything's wonderful. And you're really in your own, like as you say, in your own echo chamber, which is the worst echo chamber of all.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and I hope we're seeing that as, again, a gift, an opportunity to see that in ourselves. Maybe how disconnected we are from other people. From
and
life.
I always thought about how these people that were so in tune, they were so busy too. Right? How did that happen? And somebody explained to me, it was like the tabernacle, right? Outside the court, they're killing animals, there's blood.
Right, yeah.
But in the Holy of Holies, it's quiet. And that's where you reside inside. And then you can do your activity or non-activity, it doesn't matter, because you're being led by the Spirit.
Yeah. That's good.
I want to get there. I know I'm not there. So the first realization is knowing you're not there.
Yeah.
So let's get there somehow. And let's do it together.
Yeah.
Let's do it together. There's the key word, together. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm going to now, you have some stuff written down over there. Is there anything you wanted to get to that we didn't discuss yet before I take it, maybe? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just saying, when I was younger, I could remember things. And then as I got older,
before 50 years, I don't remember stuff.
As I got
I'm
older,
not 50 yet, so.
I wrote things down. And now I don't even remember where I wrote things down. So, no, we can talk, just about the I think you wanted to get into the whole Revelations issue, maybe, or where the church stands. But
to close, yeah, sure.
No, I just there was something I forgot to talk about. I was going to way back and just say, talk about the economy. In the 30s, people after the World War II, they thought, what was Europe thinking, letting Hitler get away with that, right?
Pacify him, appease him.
France had a bigger army than Germany when Germany invaded France. I don't know what happened. Nobody have ever explained it to me, why they lay down. And it's the same thing here with our debt. People are going to look back 20 years, 5 years, 2 years from now and go, what were they thinking for 30 years overspending? I mean, 20/20, right? Hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah, sure.
And so that's what I'm thinking. It's nobody's thinking outside the box, or the politician says, I don't care, I'm not going to be in office 5 years from now.
Sure.
I'll be in another 4 years, everything should hold together, and then I'm fine.
And then I'm good. Yeah.
So I'll get my votes,
Yeah.
and I'm kicking the can down the road.
Well, the thing that, to go, I think, in the direction you're talking about, it's debatable, right? But I mean, the question of, you think about this nation and you think about the greatest economy that's ever been on this planet and the greatest military that's ever, like the greatest of everything, right? Everything that we have, and yet you can debate, but there's a lot of people, more people probably than not, that say the U.S. is hard to find in the Bible, in prophecy. And, and you can make some arguments that maybe it's this or maybe it's that.
Absolutely.
But put it this way: there's a lot of nations that are mentioned by name.
A lot of them don't even exist. Small, countries.
There's no debate that Persia
right.
is Iran.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You have to make some pretty big leaps to say that this is the. So all I say that for is to say.
So
you
how
have
does
to ask the question?
So how
what
does that?
mean?
So that impacts
What does
how
that
you
mean?
live your life now.
It should.
As a
It
Christian.
does,
but
to
it
me.
does for you
It
personally.
does to me. I think about
As
it
it
all
does
the
for me.
time. I mean, I don't. Again, where is our hope? Where is our hope? Where are we investing our security? Right? Is it in a president or a government or something that is man-made? I mean, we know everything man-made is going to be shaken.
Right, and I'm usually in Europe a lot before the pandemic,
Yeah,
and I'm the one Republican, and they always love to ask me questions, and I'll tell them, listen, I voted for Trump, and I can say this to certain people, but if you look at Revelation,
You just said it to everybody.
No, I mean in Europe they don't.
Don't tell anybody.
What was the tree of life that was in? It's for the healing of the nations. So at the end of Revelation, there's still nations.
Yeah.
So this whole thing about nationality being not, nationalism being wrong,
Getting rid of it.
I don't understand that going
Yeah.
forward. I really don't. I'm trying to figure out
Yeah.
where that lays in terms of where we are, how the world's really going to look. I mean, how did the Jews think Jesus, the Messiah was going to come? They never expected how he came, and it'll
Of
be
course.
kind of similar to
Similar
this,
this
right?
time too.
But you got to be watching and looking and knowing what you're looking for,
Right.
and I think that's what the word does for us.
There are signs, right? I mean,
Right.
knowledge of discourse, Matthew
Right.
24. I mean, there are
Right.
signs.
Everybody knows we're in the last days because the Bible says we're in the last days.
Okay, because I hear both of you maybe at times in the conversation
Sorry.
say, no. Maybe I'm hearing 20 years down there. Nobody knows.
Nobody
we don't
knows.
know. Nobody knows.
Right.
My opinion now, things. I mean,
Yeah.
it looks a lot closer than it did.
Well, we said that earlier.
It did a year ago.
Things
To
like
paraphrase Churchill, is this the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end? Right? Where are we? I mean, when Peter stood up, most scholars say that's when the last days started because he quoted Joel. He said, "The last days God will pour out His Spirit, the
Right.
Spirit of." So we know we're in the last days. Now we're getting to the point where, So I'll just keep going along this thought process. That's
I like
okay.
it, yeah.
So we were thinking about when does He come back, and obviously Israel coming back is a big sign, right?
1948. So the prophetic clock for those people that don't know.
Right,
it's-
they become a
okay.
nation. So it says Jerusalem will be trodden on by the Gentiles until the time the Gentiles is over.
Yeah.
Probably 48, right? But they didn't take Jerusalem to 67,
Some
but
90.
48, right? And
Either.
so you do the clock, and I think we said this
Yeah,
last
say it,
time.
bring that up. Yeah.
10 years ago, 30 years ago, like the U.S. has to be in Revelations, and we're missing
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And now you realize it doesn't have to be.
Right.
And now you're seeing things set up in the Middle East where, this could be just right around the corner. I mean, we are in a different time than we were just 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that when you talk about our country, I mean, the sad thing for me is, when you look at the Old Testament, I felt like every time you look at the Israelites or you look at nations, it seems like the punishment, if you want to call it, that God would allow would be to give you what you want. Like if you're pushing for something so hard, like in the Old Testament, right? We're sick of manna, we want meat. Okay, you want meat? Okay, here's meat, and it's so much meat that and then it takes it out to a point where you go, what I don't even know. Like you're asking for things that God knows better than you do, but He allows us to see that so that we can change. Why did they get captive in Babylon for all those years? Right?
Yeah, right.
And so I look at our country the same way. Like look what we've done as a country. We've rejected God. We've pushed Him out of the schools. We've pushed Him out of the universities. He's out of the corporate setting. He's, where is God left in our society? He's off the internet. He can't social media. Like, where is He other than now we're shutting churches? Like, I mean, you just have to start asking, like, God will just give you, if you say you don't want him, he respects that. And he will not force himself on you. And that's what free will is all about, right? Nor a country. And that's why he respects leaders.
He gave his chosen people over to captivity.
Exactly.
A few times.
Exactly.
Multiple
Right,
times.
right.
So-
And it's not really a punishment in the sense that God's a mean ogre who's up there with a stick ready to strike. It's like, I'll let you go the way you want to go. And you'll see the errors of your way. Some of you will.
Right.
Some of you won't. That's the unfortunate side of it. I mean, and that's where we are as a country.
Yeah, I agree.
Scary, but sad.
So you think, though, at the end of the day, the hours you feel as if the hour is very late.
To me,
for-
Yeah, the hour to me, I mean, look, we could all talk about different prophecies. I
Yeah,
love
right.
talking about that stuff.
Middle East, like with what Ted alluded
well,
to before.
Well, 1948, this past week was Israel's 72nd birthday. So if
you get hit on Psalm 90.
Yeah, so in Psalm 90, some people say, well, what does that mean, right? Because, Christ talked about, the generation that sees this. What's this? Well, when Israel becomes a nation, right? They were gone, and then they came back. That was 1948, as you said. Now, in Psalms, it says, what's a generation? Because the generation that sees this, right? So what's a generation? Well, it's debatable, but a lot of people point to a verse in the Psalms that says, a generation will be 70 years, of which Drake maybe 80. So, 70 to 80 years is kind of what we would consider a generation if you use the scriptures. I just said Israel's 72 years old this week. So what does that mean? Does that mean that, you got 8 years left? And I don't know. Nobody knows. But I do know, what I do know is the hour is late. And time is short.
Even a peace agreement. We don't even touch on the peace, a peace agreement, and that you said Erwin Baxter.
Yeah,
So he was
Erwin's
in
one of those
ministry.
people that, and I've been looking
Tell
back
who
at
he is.
Erwin Baxter is a end times, preacher in Texas.
And he's connected, right?
Yeah,
He's got some
Yeah,
connections.
he's connected. Look, we all know in the prophetic circles, in the eschatology, end time circles,
Right.
look, you can find somebody that says just about anything you think. You can go on the internet and find anything you believe. I'm
Different
sure
views.
somebody's got it, right? So, because we don't know, but like you said this in what I think the first message you brought on your end time series, that the purpose of prophecy. Like it's to guide us, it's to show us things, it's to lead us and to show that God is true, right? How can you have? I saw something recently, the number of prophecies before His coming, and they all were fulfilled. The odds of that happening, you can't even.
Whatever, it's like 212 left.
I mean, yeah, it's insane. So
And if you look back on some of these people, and say, well, he's a little odd. Go look at the Old Testament prophets, right? He was naked for a year.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
Jeremiah,
you have
we
to have
can
the whole
follow.
house in order
right.
for me to listen to them 100%. It's a little self-serving to say I just don't want to think about it.
Right.
You know,
The worst thing
We
you
love
can
our
do-
lives here.
Yeah.
Pastor
Exactly.
Linda and I talk about it. Like at the end
you
of the
guys
day,
just talked about
I think it becomes a heavy message, and I know a lot of people have heard my messages these past, and this isn't the usual stuff they hear from the pulpit, I think, and they're like, well, where are these uplifting messages? I think they are uplifting.
I agree with you.
But it's how you look at it.
And we have
your
so much.
perspective.
We have so much. That
Oh my gosh.
But do
You don't
we have
know.
too much, right? That's what you just
Goes
said.
to that Os
before,
Guinness quote.
right? Like,
It
are
goes
we
to the
too
Os
in love
Guinness
with
quote.
what we have
With
here?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
the church in Revelations that's Laodicea, right?
Yeah.
It's naked and blind and poor and wretched, and you don't know you're naked. How could you not know you're naked and blind and poor?
Right.
But isn't that even? See, that's again. Pastor Linda and I were talking. You know what? Can I have you guys back next week? You want to come back? I'm serious. Will you come back?
Of course.
This conversation's not over. I think we should just continue this conversation. We'll end it a little bit, but I love that you're bringing up the church in Laodicea, because I think that's the problem, that a lot of us are going to go back to our normal, quote unquote, normal lives and not realize we're in the same condition and how lukewarm we are. And that's as a pastor, that's concerning.
Yeah.
So I think we should continue this conversation. I'd even like to talk more about the Middle East and maybe the peace agreement and maybe what that triggers, and we can get into, because this Sunday I'm kind of stopping and I'm pausing a little bit to address some of this before we go back into normalcy.
Yeah.
I'd like to stop and then get back into that.
Yeah.
You two are game for that?
Sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Normal in the world is not good for normal in the kingdom, right?
Yeah,
it's two different
right.
things.
Definition. Yeah.
And
right.
so
Two
we've been
different
like
things.
the frog in the water. We've just been, assimilating into the system.
Yeah.
And you look around and you start, like I do, I start comparing myself to the people. I should be okay. Well, it's not what I read in there sometimes. So
Yeah.
How dangerous is that?
Exactly. It's very dangerous. It's
That's-
eternally dangerous.
Ah.
That's the problem.
That's
It's not
the
just
thing, you know?
a big mistake in life that
Right.
we made. It's an eternal decision that people.
I mean, when you look at the prophecies that we're talking about and you start to really just read them, I mean, that even the elect would be deceived if it was
That's right,
possible,
John,
right?
yeah.
I mean, the Bible says that. So the
Sure,
good news in that
right.
verse is if it was possible, you imply meaning, well, it's not possible, but you got to be the elect, right?
Right.
And that just goes to show you, this is where I think, and Pastor Linda is so good at keeping us, knowing when you think you're okay, that's when you're at your most
Yeah,
dangerous
exactly.
point, right?
Most
I mean,
vulnerable.
and so,
Exactly.
so if you're not watching and praying, as the Bible said, or just looking and knowing what to look for, because look, the powers that are coming are
They're
nothing
increasing.
like
They're
anything that we've
increasing.
ever seen. And we've seen the movies, and you hear about the Antichrist, and you go, 666 and all that stuff. But look how further along we just went in like this short time period. And if it was 20 years ago, whatever, you look at some of these prophecies, how could they have a one world government? How could they have one currency? And you'd be like, the mark of the beast, right? But look at the technology, the Elon Musk interview. I mean, like with Joe Rogan. I mean,
how
like,
overt it was.
I mean, he
it
said
wasn't.
10
It was
years
just
away, we're not-
like 5 to 10. He said.
he says 5 to 10. I think you said this. We're not even
no, so
talking.
nonchalant,
Right?
right?
We won't even be talking to each other. We'll just be thinking.
You know,
You'll
It just
understand
makes
somebody.
sense. Right?
It
In the
does,
world, it
right.
just makes sense to do that.
Of course.
That like the Matrix, that you'll
Right.
literally be. You could learn a language as fast as you
Right.
very quickly, and then you would understand. Because it takes too much time to compress our thoughts, like he said.
Yeah.
How much of a waste of time that is.
How about
To
in
compress our
a
thoughts and then to. I was
how
like,
about in
oh my
a
gosh.
post-pandemic world though, where you take speech away, where they say you're transmitting and you're spreading disease?
Right.
You've just solved some of that problem. So I mean, these are the answers the world has. But look, the deceit that's going to come on this world, the stage, is going to overwhelm so many people if you don't know what to look for.
And I'll just
Yeah, and with
I recommended the book
Yeah,
to the men's group tonight. Love Not the
I
World.
knew you were going to say that.
Watch me.
She
It's
made me best
It's an eye opener to anyone who doesn't understand that the prince of the power of the airways is commanding the whole commerce, world,
Right.
systems. He controls
Systems.
systems behind
and
the
we're
scenes.
touching it all the time, but we have to
She
be
said,
careful. To say, well, I'm not as bad as that guy, but we're still in the world. So I don't know, but still, that would be for me, it was
I
a real
have to go,
eye-opener.
yeah, because even on Sunday, I have to go back to Romans 12.
Yeah.
I have to. Just being conformed. And how would we miss that in the world? And going back to what Pastor Lindy, brought my attention to with the Weiss translation, what we're inhaling and exhaling, and how we're not cognizant of it, of how the enemy is behind everything. And I mean, that may be a good place for us to end. But hey, we need to be sober. We need to be vigilant. We need to be alert. As Christians, these are not normal times. I'm thankful that both of you were able to join us today and impart your wisdom. Who would like to? Could one of you pray for?
Leave it to the young guy.
All right.
Well, Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity, Father. We thank you that you are still sovereign. You are on your throne. You are God, Lord. And so no matter what this world has, no matter what gets thrown at us, Lord, we put ourselves in your hands. We ask for your Holy Spirit to cover and guide each and every one of us that hears this, Lord. We hope that something was deposited in somebody that was said that would speak to exactly where they are, Lord. And we pray a special blessing over everyone, for their families, for their friends, for their loved ones, over this disease and pandemic that, like the Israelites with the blood on the doorpost, Lord, we cover everybody and we say that it cannot come towards your people, Father. So we cover them in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Thank you for this time.
Amen.
We love you. We'll see you on Sunday, and I'm looking forward to these two guys coming back next week.
Thank you, Pastor.
All right. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.